Welcome to the show, Mr. Otto.
Thank you.
We're so excited to have you here.
Episode 8.
Episode 8.
Wow, this is big.
I know, we've been going pretty strong for like 8 weeks. I think we skipped 1 week for Thanksgiving, but
definitely skipped a week, and not sure that we're going to be able to keep up with this pace, but for now,
it's a good start.
It's a lot. Yeah, that's good.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Troy is an agent here at Keller Williams with us, and we hear about him a lot. He's kind of a big deal in our office.
He is a big deal.
Yeah, he's a vice president.
I guess so.
Yeah, you are vice president of the Young Professionals Network at the Seattle King County Real Estate Association, right?
There you go, yep.
Tell us what that means.
So the Seattle King County Realtors is a subsidiary, I guess, under the National Association of Realtors. And the Seattle King County Realtors has a membership of just over 6,000 paying members with the association. And the few things that I really like about SKCR are their focus on education and advocacy. There's a lot of advocacy that happens in and around our county, whether it's sign laws or these new ADU laws and restructuring, which is really exciting because we have very low inventory levels. So we focus on very pro-housing, pro-buyer and seller legislation to help make housing a little bit more affordable, which is a good thing.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
All that works out.
We need that here.
We're going to talk about that today.
Oh, yeah.
So we as agents that are doing deals in King County, we all have to be a part of an association. And so we give money to those associations, and what they do is they go and they lobby on our behalf and make sure that the laws that are going into place, like Troy was talking about, are beneficial for both real estate agents and home buyers and sellers. And they teach us about everything that's coming down the pipes. So we thought it would be really fun to have Troy here and teach us about what he thinks is going to happen for next year. But before we get to that, how did you get into real estate?
So I actually grew up in a real estate household. My dad is a broker as well. I grew up in Maui.
Is it like a spec house on Arrested Development?
No, it wasn't like selling Sunset. Yeah.
In Maui, wow, that market is tricky.
It is, for sure. It's been an interesting life that I've had to live in that regard. After the 2008 crash, the second home kind of vacation market just was really tough in many markets, and especially Maui. And so it was an interesting time for my family to go through that, and came out on the other side. And my dad has been a successful luxury real estate broker for over 35 years, and is
He's still doing it in Maui?
Still doing it, yep.
So you're following along in his footsteps?
I'm trying to fill some footsteps, yes. And
do you ever call him for advice?
Sometimes I do.
Or do you just try to go your own way?
It's interesting. We talk, the things that we talk about are mostly the kind of intangibles. Like our markets are very separate. So high-end luxury in a second home market versus like Seattle is like a little different.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
So the markets are different. So the kind of ins and outs and the contracts and all of that, those things are a little different. But in general, he's a great mentor. So I'm super lucky. But I never wanted to be in real estate until maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, why? Because you just didn't want to do it.
Typical kid.
Yeah.
Wanted to not
do
the path that your parents set for you.
Yeah. Whether they wanted it or not, I was like, no, absolutely not.
Not for me.
Not for me.
There's no way.
No way. And,
so what did you set out to do?
So
what brought you to Seattle, actually?
Yeah, good question. So it was
to the mainland.
But yeah, that's right.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was born and raised on Maui, and after high school, I went to the University of Oregon both my parents went there, and I applied to a bunch of schools, and everything was very far and scary. So I was like, okay, I have a little bit of familiarity with Oregon. So I went there, met my girlfriend there, and we moved up to Seattle after graduating college.
And was she from this area?
She was.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was a pull a little bit. Yeah.
Makes sense.
My husband's from this area too. Otherwise, I don't think we got.
You guys met at college, right?
What we did in Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Far from home.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's either a spouse or a job that makes you move.
Right.
So.
Born and raised here.
Really, yeah. It's
I know.
it's a great place. We love it. I love it, and especially being from a sunny, tropical place. And
Yeah, wild. Did people ever ask you if you wish you could go back?
if I had $1,
All the
if I
time.
had $1,
Oh,
yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it was her originally, and we had a great kind of start here. And she came up with a job, and I didn't at all, and I didn't want to go back to Maui. So I was like, all right, let's see what Seattle has to offer, and kind of bounced around a little bit. And finally, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try this real estate thing. Finally,
Actually,
I'm going to check it out. Yeah.
It's for me.
Hey, Dad, we're going to try it. So, and here we are. Yeah, still with it.
Neither Sarah nor I started in real estate. She did stage acting.
Yeah, still do.
right.
Yeah. So I feel like I had absolutely no connection to real estate other than my husband, and I had purchased a home and then real estate, like literally from 0 to 60.
Yeah.
You had a little bit more investing experience, but
Well,
totally
so-
different background with your career.
My parents were, my dad was an architect and my mom was a pediatrician, and so they invested, they had a side hustle, and so we were taught as kids, like we got extra money if we would go to the rental properties and help do painting.
That's awesome.
And that sort of thing. So it was always kind of like in the back of my brain, but I did not go to school for real estate. I actually went to get my master's in education and taught for a decade and then dove into it. So it all works out though.
Yeah.
It
Everybody
does.
has their own different little path that leads you to real estate.
Exactly.
I think real estate calls the creative people. That's what I think.
Yeah, I
It's
think
definitely not for the people who can sit at a desk
the
from
faint of
9
heart.
to 5. Yeah. But
Yeah, exactly.
it is sort of all encompassing. You have to have a lot of skills in different facets.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, you can, whatever experience you have, you can use in this position. I mean, education-wise, like every day we're educating our buyers and our sellers, and I mean, we kind of got to act a little bit. And
Boy, do you when you're starting out, man, those skills come in handy. You can talk to anyone about anything.
Especially like when I started, I didn't know anything about owning a home, and I only bought my first home a couple years ago. But so I kind of had to act like I knew what I was doing.
Right.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But that really helps, and it hones your skills and your teaching skills and your communication skills with those clients. So you can use a lot in this business. There's a space for everybody.
No doubt.
It's not for the faint of heart, but there is a space for everybody.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we all attended a meeting with Matthew Gardner, and where we got to learn a little bit about what's coming down the pipe for 2025. And this episode is kind of geared towards helping our listeners understand what the economists are predicting and what we might anticipate seeing for 2025. I do want to put it out there that not one of us is an economist. Like, we are not paid to research data. We do a lot of research on specific areas, especially the areas that we serve clients in. And so today is just kind of, I don't know, we're repeating back or sharing what we learned a little bit.
Yeah.
What was your key takeaway from that meeting?
Yeah, so backing up to who this guy is. Matthew Gardner is a local Washington State economist. He's from England, so he's super entertaining.
He's very funny.
Great to listen.
Very funny.
Very
He has
funny.
a lot of great jokes.
He could have his own like Netflix stand-up, and you would
He does.
also just learn a lot.
Yeah. He makes data sound interesting, which is why we love him.
Yeah.
And he's also very accurate with what his predictions are. Seattle King County Realtors has a Young Professionals Network, which I'll be leading next year. But every year for the past, this was just 9 years, our Seattle King County Realtors Young Professionals Network invited Matthew Gardner to come and speak and give his report of the year and his predictions for the next year. And again, he's very, very accurate most of the time, which is, hard to do in this market. But so basically,
And can I just stop there?
Yeah.
Because since that meeting, I've also gone through and I've read the Redfin 2025 predictions, the Zillow 2025 predictions, and a lot of what they will say is there's so much uncertainty just because we don't know how this new president is going to enact different tariffs, which could be inflationary, how they're going to increase debt spending, which could be inflationary. So there are all of these pieces that we just aren't sure about, and many of them waited for months before they put it out, much longer than usual, because they're still trying to get a sense. So I think that yes, it's very hard to be accurate. And if you look, there are so many different companies trying to pinpoint what they anticipate will happen too.
Yeah.
And probably more uncertainty than most, just because we are about to go into a shift of administration. So,
and
it's always a prediction with, what ifs, but this year is even a little bit more uncertain just because we are having a huge shift in our
Isn't
government.
that exciting?
We love change.
You just never know what's going to come.
I know. Yeah.
If you want predictability, don't be a real estate agent.
No. It's interesting because if you look back at like 2019 to 2020, no economist would have predicted what have happened.
Right.
So it's an impossible job, but these high-level economists do a pretty damn good job. In general, his report was pretty positive. All things considered, the last couple years have been quite a change from 2021.
2023 was our worst year, though.
Yeah, 2023 was a tough change. And going back to like uncertainty, like every day is a new day, really. Take the cliche aside. Just the other day, just a couple days ago, as of today, the Fed announced that they were going to decrease the number of rate cuts from 4 down to 2. And that sent the stock market into a frenzy.
Right.
And so, like, every day something can just screw up the entire progress
could go upside down, topsy-turvy.
Exactly. So in general, it was pretty positive. We as in the high-level economists, not me.
You can throw yourself in there, Troy. That's why you're on our podcast.
Right. Oh, God, yeah. But most higher-level economists are expecting rates to come down and stay in the 6s towards the lower end of that range, compared to where we are at about 7% interest rates. So if we can,
not a huge change.
Not a huge change. We're not going back down to 3% interest rates again, which is that never should have happened in hindsight. It's basically free money.
It set an expectation and horrible precedent that people assume that is going to happen again when it's really never even happened ever. And I think the good news I'm taking away from that is sitting somewhere in the 6s, low 6s, at least you can sort of get comfortable with that. Homeowners who have been sitting on the sidelines can say, okay, we're not going to see 3s, we're not going to see 4s. I can stomach 6 if I know it's going to stay there and it's not going to bump up.
We've decided that 6 is okay.
Yeah.
After being here for 3 years, it's kind of that mindset of, okay, nothing's changing. So the only thing that I can do is change my expectations a little bit.
That's exactly right.
What I can buy.
Yeah, I have one client in particular I'm thinking of. He has a 1.9% interest rate, and he is thinking about selling. I'm like, why? Because you don't have a good reason to, so why are you trying to sell? But some people still want to, but that discretionary selling is not very common.
It's not going to happen. We're not going to see as much of that moving into 2025.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a huge boom of purchases. But I think what he did say is that we are going to see that 2025 is going to have more home sales and buyers than 2024 or 2023. So we're on the up and up, you guys.
Yeah, we're on the trend. We had a huge just skyrocket in appreciation and activity a couple years ago, and since 2022, it definitely slowed quite a bit. 2023, like you said, was just coming to a screeching halt.
Right.
Towards the back half of that year.
Nobody was ready.
Nobody was ready. And again, you can't really predict that.
Well, and at the time, we've talked to a lot of loan officers, but at the time, one of the things that we were trying to tell clients is, well, these interest rates will go back down. They're going to go back down. So, marry the house, date the rate.
Yeah.
But we're not saying anymore.
We're not saying that anymore.
We're not saying that anymore.
The case.
No.
Make sure you like the house. Make sure you can afford it. Make sure in an area like all the things that still apply. Just stick to those rules.
Exactly, yeah. And setting expectations to our clients up front, like now we are a little bit more used to the overall, like in the grand scheme of the last 40, 50 years, like 6% is not a bad interest rate.
It's not the highest, that's for
It's
sure.
not the 18s, the 20s that we saw a couple decades ago, but at our prices where they're at right now, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's as long as my clients, I feel, are emotionally ready, they're financially ready, then they can make that move, make that sale, make that purchase. But those that are just doing it to get in and get a free loan basically at 2% interest rate, like that's not happening anymore. So it's a little bit more intentional. The whole process I found is slower from deciding to make that sale or make that purchase to actually enacting on it. That discrepancy has lengthened for me.
Don't you think meeting with the loan officer and understanding a little bit about what they qualify for is a different conversation than it was a couple years ago, right?
Exactly
because
right.
This increase in interest rate, it's actually pulling back your buying power. So the amount of home you can purchase has significantly decreased. The lower the interest rate, the more money you have to spend on the home because you're not being tied up on interest payments. So
exactly right. Yeah.
I think that's been the hardest piece, but I also think that for some folks, we are seeing that our salaries are going up, right? Our economy is too strong. There are people whose jobs are growing, and so and there are people who have to move, and they're going to need to go to where their family or jobs are located. So we're also seeing that. Because the economy is so strong, there's nothing the Feds can do. They can't drop interest rates because we are outperforming what they anticipated.
Right, which is leading to the reduction in the rate cuts for next year. And basically it seems like inflation has plateaued a little bit. So, but consumers on the other hand aren't really feeling it. So it's a matter of like, okay, we've slowed the economy down a little bit, which is what needed to happen. But we're not feeling it out in the market on the real estate side and just the consumer spending side. Everything is still expensive, and it's a little bit of a whiplash scenario of like, okay, inflation was going so strong, and all of a sudden, oh wait, this stuff is like double the price now.
Right.
It's like, wait, what? And now our checkbooks are feeling it.
Absolutely.
So that leads into this decision of discretionary spending and the real estate market. So it's over the last couple of years, I felt definitely like a slowdown of activity, of new buyer activity, just new movement.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a ton of slowdown, and it's all across the board. We're seeing agents leaving the industry just because they're not able to make enough money and sell enough homes in order to make ends meet. I think that when we look at prices, that's kind of the determining factor here, because we saw the prices increase so dramatically back in 2020, and then couple that with interest rates. Do we think that prices are going to continue to go up in Seattle, you guys, in 2025?
That's the big question, and that's the big question leading up to every election year anyway. A lot of people tend to hold off on any activity right before an election happens, but almost every election cycle the year after, prices still go up, except for 2008, which that makes sense because the Great Recession.
We were in a crisis. We were in a housing crisis.
So I don't foresee anything. Again, I'm not an economist, but high-level economists still believe that we're going to see continued prices rise, especially in the Seattle area. So I'm not too worried about that.
Well, I think because Seattle is a landlocked state, right? There's only so many areas that we can go to build. And this was one of the things that he talked about is building is what reduces the price point for the current single family homes, right? So if we aren't building, there's no competition to kind of drive those prices down. We don't have any new product. That's kind of the biggest factor here in Washington. Now, I know some of that is going to change with the new housing bill that's coming out, and all of the districts are going to have to create plans for new development, but we haven't seen those plans. You know, we haven't been offered those plans by each of the districts. And what I know or what I've read about is that it's not going to be significant enough to shift our market in a downward trend or to not see any growth at all.
Right. And how I see it is twofold. One is our current zoning.
So restrictive.
Very
Didn't he
restrictive.
say Washington was 50 out of 50 of the most restrictive states?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very restricted.
Yeah. And in the city of Seattle, of the areas zoned single family, it's something like 60% of those lots are zoned as single family homes, which in a city, you would want higher density.
Right, more
Because there's so many people wanting to be here and people are being pushed out or prices are skyrocketing.
Right.
It's simple economics, really, but the zoning, we should have higher density, but there's no question about it.
But so many of the people who own those homes are like, not in my backyard.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, they don't want it
Exactly.
there.
They don't want it there.
Yeah, right.
So the only areas that Matthew said they were getting permits out were in North Bend and Renton area. So we might see some new builds there. But as far as Seattle, King County, or Snohomish County, we're really just seeing what we call infill. So one property becomes 4 maybe, or one property is now a duplex instead of a single family home. But that's not really going to move the needle on a significant amount of new housing for all the people who still need it.
Yeah. And again, I think part of that is having a rezoning plan of like what we have currently in Seattle. But on top of that, people are getting pushed out.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. And if there isn't a big change in the rate of new build permits being pulled, then we're not going to see much of a change.
Right. And then he talked a little bit about if you were to build in your backyard, which some of the new laws are stipulating you can have 1 detached accessory dwelling unit or 2, those cost $500,000 to build.
Yeah, you're not selling those at $500,000 for a starter home for a new family. Those are selling at $850,000, $900,000, $950,000.
But it's so hard to build. Like the cost of entry for those, if the city is anticipating that as a single family home owner that I'm going to put out $500,000 on a construction loan to build something, like the amount of people who are going to go do that are going to be so few that it's not going to move the needle.
The lot next to my house, when we bought our house, was a little totally decrepit manufactured home on a good sized lot that was purchased for like $320,000. It's like not even that cheap at $320,000 and subdivided into 2 lots, and they built 2 houses, but they listed them at, what they needed to list them at, $825,000. $815,000. Well, they sold for like $775,000. So they didn't even make what they were trying to sell in those. That's just 2 homes next to my house.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was like a developer.
And if you're a developer, your access to loan products like that are different than a single family home person. So
It's just it's a bit, especially where inflation is and like everything is expensive.
Costs money. Yes.
Everything does, let alone building material.
And building material will be more expensive if we anticipate that the administration is going to enact tariffs on both Canada, which is where most of our lumber comes from, and China, which is where most of our building products come from. We're going to be in a tough spot.
Yeah. And this is where I don't love to speculate because there are so many moving parts and what the new president can and can't change and fight for
or
and
will
pass.
Actually follow through on.
Exactly. So there's a lot of conjecture and speculation that's going on, and I mean we think about this stuff all the time. But at the end of the day, Seattle's a special place. We have a super strong economy. We have a lot of high-paying jobs. So
generally free from climate, which is going to be the other biggest piece as we get further and further down the road here, is how is climate change going to impact where people want to move to. And Seattle just doesn't have as many natural disasters as most of the other places in the country.
Right. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people moving in, and that is, again, simple economics drives prices up, and some people get mad and some people leave and they go buy somewhere else, and it's a constant flow in and out. But in general, we're seeing a high level of influx coming in. So again, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But
yeah. Okay, you guys, this is a question for everybody. What areas are you most interested in for 2025? Where are you watching? What are you looking at? What's tickled your fancy?
What's tickled my fancy?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm still on the north end. I'm hot in the north end. I really like the Arlington, Anacortes, Burlington area. I think that that's going to pop off. Amazon put in a large facility out there a couple years ago, which was the first robotic distribution center they ever built, which required them to hire a bunch of engineers in. And so we're just seeing kind of, I just looked at prices out in Monroe. They're like $1 million homes out there now.
Yeah, they are.
And so I think that there's going to be this trend where the Snohomish Valley up in through Marysville all the way north is going to go.
That's interesting. Yeah. I guess I'm looking at specifically, I'm really intrigued by the condo market right now.
Okay.
Our condo supply in Seattle is our condo supply is high. The demand is low. We're seeing like 4 months of supply in Seattle.
You mean of homes that are available for purchase? Yes. Okay.
Right.
Not that we have a significant amount of condos in Seattle.
Right. There's not a lot of inventory levels anyway, compared to the last few years.
Yeah, and they're not building more condos, really, is the other thing. What they're building with regards to condos are more like townhomes than your typical condo buildings.
Right. We have about a little over 4 months of supply in the city of Seattle in the condo market, which is like way too high.
So are you thinking about buying one?
I mean, kind of am. There's a lot of opportunity in the condo market, and with the return to work that's happening for next year, Amazon's, I think they're at a 5 day.
It'll be 5 days a week. My husband works at Amazon.
Yeah, 5 days a week. So this whole exodus away from Seattle during early COVID, they're going to have to come right back in.
Well, and the FIFA World Cup is coming.
Yes,
they're going to have in 2 years, but they have another event this summer, which is going to drive a ton of tourism into the city. So, and that's when people start to fall in love with things. They go and visit.
Yeah.
They say, "Ooh, I can see myself here."
Yeah. So if you're a condo buyer in Seattle, now's the time.
Now's the time.
That's my economist.
Live in it for a year and a half, and then start putting it on Airbnb for FIFA World Cup.
Yeah, I'm planning on being away and renting out my house for the World Cup. So I think that's the move. Yeah.
I think that we are big on rugby, so we're going to go to the next Rugby World Cup. But I don't know if that's in Australia, but I don't know that we'll go to FIFA here. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't, it might be just crazy.
It's going to be crazy. I heard that the amount of fans that are coming without tickets is like more than double than the ticket holders themselves. And so it's like 3 times as many.
Yeah, so that will be an interesting year.
Yeah.
Definitely. So Seattle condos, that's my watch.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What about you, babe?
Oh gosh, what area am I looking at? Well, surprisingly, right in the area that I live in, which is kind of like Renton, Kent area, there is actually a fair amount of new development happening. They're not huge complexes. It's maybe like 40 homes. It's not, we're not talking like hundreds, but there's actually a fair amount of new development where I am. So I'm sort of interested kind of in my area because I'm like 35, 40 minutes outside the city. with like minimal traffic, which is like exactly the radius that most people are looking to live when they're saying, I want to live outside the city, but I can't be like an hour drive. The people who moved,
if they need to be in Bellevue and in Seattle.
The people who moved to Buckley in 2020 because they didn't have to go to work are sad now because Buckley's beautiful, but they live an hour and 25, 30 minutes with light traffic to get to work. So I kind of like the distance that I'm at, and there's some opportunities there.
Well, and Covington has definitely popped off in 2024. It was one of the top 10 fastest growing cities, which is kind of over there too.
Yeah, I'm like 10 minutes from Covington.
Covington and Black Diamond's another one. There's a lot of new construction going on to Black Diamond.
Yeah, the whole 10 Trails. 10 Trails, right? That's
Yep, 10 Trails.
10 Trails, like development is amazing.
It's wild.
Massive. It's like a whole complex. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's really pretty out there too.
Yeah.
I like the whole south area.
So if you're interested in buying properties on the north, south, or central Seattle condo areas,
so all of the areas,
you know who to call now.
Yeah, you got south side, north side, central.
Yeah.
That's really all you need.
Yeah,
there you go. That's it. And anywhere else, actually, just give us a call. We drive. We drive a lot.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show and giving us your insight. It's been
thanks.
Super
it was incredible.
Fun.
Yeah, it's been super fun.
It's usually just us, ping-ponging back and forth. It's nice to have another point of view.
Yeah, happy to be involved. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, you guys, and tune in to our next episode. Bye.
Bye.